Hello, my name is Brett Cain, and I'm a senior here at Liberty University. I got my commercial pilot's license this year, January, and I plan on someday working for an airline. And I think that this course is going to be very, very helpful for that because most jobs that you start with when you're working in an airline is a regional job, and then you have to work your way up to a major from there. And most regionals use CRJs, so I think learning this information now and learning about CRJs now will help me out a lot in the future. But anyways, this is my aviation video presentation for Aviation 435 online. Now I was given a plethora of topics I could choose from for this event, but what I chose to talk about today is CRM. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through exactly what CRM is, what it stands for, what does it encompass, that type of thing. Then we're going to talk about why it's needed, and finally we're going to determine how we can use it in our day-to-day, especially our training environment here at Liberty. So for starting, we're going to ask, what is CRM? So as most pilots know, when you get into aviation, they like to use lots of acronyms. So CRM is no exception, it's just an acronym. So CRM stands for Crew Resource Management. And it's actually quite interesting how CRM came about. So when airplanes first came out, there was lots of emphasis on making sure the pilots are trained to make sure the pilots know what they need to know to fly the airplane safely. And for a while this worked. You had a smaller aircraft, you had aircraft that didn't need more than one pilot, and they were able to just handle themselves in the cockpit. As the airline industry became a bigger business, you had airplanes that started getting, more than one person in the cockpit, and eventually working up to where now you even have more people in the cockpit who some aren't pilots. You have stewardess and flight attendants and things like that. So the aviation community has just completely changed since the beginning of the time that aviation has, planes have only been around for about 100 or so years, but in that short amount of time, huge changes have happened. And one of the things that changed was crew resource management. So when they started, like I said, it wasn't a big deal. In fact, crew resource management only came about after several accidents and after the voice box data and the recordings came back, and the NTSB determined that most of those crashes were because of just bad communication or people not using all their available resources in the cockpit. You might have heard, as a private pilot especially, the thing called single pilot resource management, or SRM. This is something that we deal with a lot here at Liberty because we fly airplanes that just require one pilot. You just have one person sitting in the cockpit, you're flying by yourself, or you're trained to fly by yourself, so you don't have to deal with CRM a lot. You just deal with flying yourself. So single pilot resource management is just using all available resources in the cockpit to fly the plane safely. CRM is kind of a branch off of that. So CRM, if you wanted to put a definition to it, stands for management of the systems, which uses all available resources, equipment, people, and procedures to promote safety. So the difference between single pilot resource management and crew resource management is actually the word crew. In SRM, you're only flying by yourself, so you don't have to deal with the crew. You don't have to talk to other people. You don't have to work with other people. As the airplanes get more and more complex, this is not something you can do. You can't fly by yourself, so you have to start implementing crew resource management. So we've talked a little bit now about what CRM is, crew resource management, but why is it needed? Why is crew resource management something that we need to learn how to do? Well, like I said, it was a big factor, CRM, or a lack of CRM, I should say, was a big factor in accidents. Lots and lots of accidents happen because of a lack of CRM. Lack of CRM also just had, delays, or you had bad communication, you had bad talking in the cockpit, you had a bunch of stuff that wasn't going to go well, or things that weren't going to happen. So a lack of CRM could be, you have accidents, which is a big deal, but you also could just have, miscommunication in the cockpit. Miscommunication in the cockpit. And when you have miscommunication in the cockpit, the famous incident of lack of crew resource management is the Air Florida flight, where they crashed in the Everglades just because everyone was fixated on a flashing light button in the cockpit and no one was flying the plane. They ended up crashing just because a little, 75-cent light bulb was burned out. So miscommunications, accidents, all this is kind of wrapped into a lack of CRM. So we can kind of see why CRM is important, because without it, you're going to have lots of situations that could get blown out of proportions and things like that. So now the question comes back to, how can we use CRM as a pilot at Liberty University? So as a pilot at Liberty University, like I said, we deal more with SRM, Single Pilot Resource Management. But the thing to think about and to remember when you're talking about crew resource management is, yes, while we don't have to deal with this now, it's something we're going to have to deal with in the future. Most of us are not going to just stick with flying single engine airplanes or airplanes that just require a single pilot for the rest of our lives. As we move up and we get into bigger careers and we fly bigger airplanes, we're going to need to know how to work with crew members. We're going to need to know how to deal with a co-pilot that we might not agree with all the time, or a captain that we don't agree with all their decisions that they make. We're going to have to learn how to deal with flight attendants if we fly passenger airplanes, and we're going to have to learn how to deal with crazy people in the back that our flight attendants have to deal with. There's lots of different things that, as a pilot, we need to know how to deal with more than just the instruments in front of us. And that's actually an important part of CRM. CRM is more concerned with the cognitive and interpersonal skills rather than the technical. Lots of pilots, we learn how to fly airplanes and we're like, oh, we can do this. This is what we need to do. We know how to fly stick and rudders. You push the yoke forward, trees get bigger, you pull back, they get smaller, that type of thing. And we don't spend a lot of time focusing on just our interpersonal skills and how to deal with people in the cockpit. And again, that's like I said, that's why we had so many accidents and miscommunications in the beginning of aviation, is because no one focused on, it wasn't taught that we needed to work on crews together. So having that foundation now in an environment where it's instilled in our training since day one that, crew resource management is something that we need to start working on now, because someday we'll have to deal with that. That's a huge benefit to schools like Liberty University, where we teach collegiate aviation. That's something big that we know going on. So just to wrap everything up then and tie it all together, we've talked about what CRM is, crew resource management. We've talked about why it's needed, and we've also talked about how we can use it right now in our present concept, and then moving forward, how that's going to be beneficial to us. Again, the big thing to remember with crew resource management is, even if we're not using it now, we're going to have to use it someday, and it's good to learn about it now so that later we can be more successful in the cockpit. Thank you.